Nerd Morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and today on the Nerd Morning Show, we are going to be talking about Book 6 in the Dresden Files, Blood Rights. I absolutely love this series, and we're getting pretty far along in this series. Just a quick note, this is going to have some spoilers in it. I'm going to be somewhat open with the story, so spoiler warning. So we open up with the story with Thomas and Harry rescuing a group of dogs, and they are being attacked by like these monkey demons, which is very Wizard of Oz, and I love it. Anyways, there's a dog that is abandoned, or sticks around more like, and that becomes Mouse, who is a wonderful, wonderful character, a great addition to the Dresden family. Is the little dog at this point, Mouse. So Thomas is the one who actually ends up giving Harry like the main quest, the assignment for this story. Essentially what he's doing is looking for the killer or killers from what they're assuming is an entropy curse. So Thomas has this friend who's a filmmaker, and they're trying to get some films done, and there are these girls that are getting attacked and are dying in these crazy, crazy circumstances. And so Harry is being called in to go and deal with this, try to find where the entropy curse is coming from, protect anybody who's being attacked, and he's going to have to do that by going on set at this film production company. So they meet together, and they give him the job of a production assistant. And there in the book, they kind of say it's essentially like a gopher position. You go for this, go for this. And that is pretty accurate, really. I enjoyed this book because though the filmmaking they do in this book is nothing like I've done in my filmmaking career. I studied film in college, and I've worked at a couple of different production houses, and so that was fun for me because I have been in that production assistant role multiple times, and that was just fun to have some real life relatability there, where the like police officer, murder mystery, detective aspects of these stories I don't really relate to as well because I don't have any real life experiences. So this was just kind of a fun connection for me in that regard for this book. So there's that element with the filmmaker and looking for the entropy curse and finding the killer aspect, which is consistent with kind of the Dresden Files stories that we've had previously, where he has been hunting for a killer or solving the mystery and doing that kind of stuff. Then we also have some connections with earlier stories. Thomas, we've seen him since book 2, and he has been an off and on character that's been somewhat important, but definitely a secondary character. And here he gets to have a bigger stage, and that's been interesting and fun. We also get to see more of his family, the Wraith family, and we first meet like Lara Wraith at the film studio, and like the first time Dresden sees her, she's like, "Oh wow, this is the most beautiful, amazing woman that he's ever seen." And it's just interesting to see how this white court vampire compares to these other individuals that Dresden runs across in the story. And then we learn more about her being the white court vampire, how she's using her like powers to ensnare people, and also how she is power hungry, dangerous, and like we learn a lot about her as a character, which was interesting. We also find some connections with Lord Wraith and Thomas and Harry Dresden's mom. So Harry Dresden's mom was actually one of Lord Wraith's lovers, and Thomas was the result of that relationship. And so that makes Thomas Harry's brother. And this is so big. This is absolutely so big because Harry is an orphan, and we actually had some orphan vibes earlier into the story where he's thinking about how he struggles maybe connecting or understanding family issues because he doesn't have anybody. And here he has this first connection. And Thomas, we also like explore and gain understanding that he is a monster, but he is also family now. And the White Court vampires are the most human of the monsters that Harry faces. And earlier in the stories, we had this very black and white. You were a monster, you were human, and we fought monsters and we saved humans. And now we're exploring a little bit more of a gray thing where monsters can be human and maybe humans can be monsters. And that's, I think, an interesting gray that we're starting to explore instead of having this the cut and dry hunt down the monsters and take them out kind of a thing. So I think that the story's started to mature a little bit with this. In this dealing, there's a definite strong family theme with Thomas and with Lord Wraith and all those types of things. The Wraith family being tight-knit in some ways and very not tight-knit in others, I think really plays into that conversation of family. And Harry finding family obviously does that too, but additionally on top of that we have Karen. Now Karen has this like family reunion and she's so worried about it because she has had this really good relationship with her mother and it's been strained over the past several years, and she feels like she has these responsibilities of being a good child by getting married and having a family and all those types of things, but those aren't also necessarily her wishes, but what her family expects of her. And I think that a lot of people will resonate with that to some degree because there's certain expectations that family puts on you and you don't necessarily fit in that mold, and you have to be able to either have that reconciled or just deal with that or work on those situations in different ways. And for Karen, this is part of her struggle that she faces. She says that she comes from this Irish Catholic family, and being married is something that's really expected, and she's had 3 failed marriages, and so it's a touchy subject for her anyways. But with that, she also hears that her youngest sister is engaged, which kind of raises the stakes for her on being single and going to this reunion alone and having all of those types of feelings. We ultimately get to that family reunion and we find out that her youngest sister is engaged to the second husband of Karen. And this is crazy. Like, what a, like, I don't know, a trick move. It was so horrible. Like, the Karen's mom's like, they're consenting adults. You didn't want him. And all that stuff is super valid, but still low blow. Like, how is Karen supposed to feel about this? Obviously not good. And on top of all of that, we find that they are going to move into the area after they're married, which is kind of this little icing on top of that cake, which is just messy. So we have all of those things going on while we are trying to look for the killers for this entropy curse at the film studio. And on top of all of those things, we have Mavra, the Black Court vampire, again, who we were introduced to in book 2, and they are hunting for Harry Dresden. Harry offended a lot of people that night, and the ramifications of that night are still yet to be fully explored. So that's something that we get a little bit of here in this book, where Mavra, the Black Court vampire, with some more of her Black Court vampires, are gunning it for Harry Dresden. So she has some additional Black Court vampires. She has these thralls, which are people who are like mind controlled and are working for Mavra. And then she also has what they called in this book Renfields. And I found this really interesting. I really enjoy Dracula as a book, and I think that it's really interesting. And if you know anything about Renfield, he is this guy in this insane asylum who is pretty much worshipping Dracula. And Renfield is like, these Renfields are people who were like quickly broken and mind controlled, and to a level where their like mind has broken and they're going mad and are going to continue getting even worse, and they will have less inhibitions and are really like dangerous. And so these are kind of like thralls but a little bit different, and I thought that separation was interesting, and calling them Renfields after that character in the book I thought was really, really fun. In order to deal with Mavra, we get Kincaid back. Now, Kincaid was this like mega hitman from earlier in the series, and he was this gun for hire who protected the archive. And this was an interesting call because he is really good at what he does, but he is also really, really expensive. And Harry Dresden never has a lot of money. And so he gets him on his team to go and hunt down these Black Court vampires. And we also get this team up with Karen. And then also we get Ebenezer McCoy, who was Harry Dresden's mentor. So this is the team that's going to go in and confront and fight all of these opponents that Mavra has in order to hopefully take down Mavra. In all of this conflict, Mavra decides that she wants to throw back some of Harry's like ideal choice of weapons and uses fire to attack Harry. Now, in this, he's using fire as well, and with all of the conflict, his hand is severely, severely burned, and in so much that it's not really usable. It's kind of a bit of a husk, and everything around it is burned except for a symbol on his palm that has Lashiel's symbol. Now, if we remember with the Denarian, the fallen angels that are these now like demons who try to tempt and control you and get it so you are able to tap into their power, but now you're serving them in some ways. Like, this is a thing that we dealt with in previous books, and these were like the scariest characters I think so far in the series. And he is tainted by Lashiel because he picked up the coin and quickly buried it away and was hoping not to be able to have influence from her. But now we see there is some level of influence. Also, he is shooting out hellfire, which is stronger and more powerful than regular fire, which is cool. It gives him an edge, but also shows that he is not free from Lashiel's influence to some degree, and this kind of is a warning sign set up for things to happen in the future. Also in this battle, dealing with the Black Court vampires, we find another need for him to use his third eye, and this is essentially him opening up his magical senses and seeing people in a deeper, more complex way. And when he looks at Kincaid, we see a very monstrous, scary thing, which is interesting. But also, when he goes and looks at Karen, we see her as the second time as an angel. And I think this is so cool because this is a character that I just adore. I think that she is so fantastic. And with this, like, she's just... it just shows that she's so good and so noble of a person. And I just really love that. I think it's very poetic and cool. Also, I think to be noted is here there is a little bit of like some romantic tension, romantic feelings that Harry has started to show towards Karen. And I think that that's interesting. Nothing's acted on either side. But also we find that Karen is a little turned on by Kincaid, which is interesting because he's like a legit monster in some respects, and that just makes that like gray area of monsters even farther. And of course, we can't make everything perfect and happy if Harry finds that he starts to have some interest towards Karen, and obviously that's going to complicate the buddy cop relationship that they've had going previously in the series, and all of those are kind of subtle, smaller undertones, but they're enough for you to pick up on it as a reader. As we have all of these people fighting the Black Court vampires, we had this interaction between Kincaid and Ebenezer McCoy, where he calls him the Black Staff. And we learn that Ebenezer McCoy is a Black Staff, essentially the White Court's hitman, the one who's able to break all of the rules of magic. And this is a heavy, heavy blow to Harry Dresden, who has this major code of honor when it comes to using his magic, and built that code of honor really out of what he was taught by Ebenezer McCoy. But because Ebenezer doesn't follow any of those rules that essentially he taught Harry, he is offended, heartbroken. It's just a big breaking point for them in their relationship. And that was really tragic to see, but also really understandable. And I think there's a lot of things that we get in this book dealing with Harry Dresden as a character. And honestly, that's one of the biggest rewards for this book. It definitely has a lot of character growth for Harry, for Karen, for Thomas, for a lot of these characters that are big and important for the series previously and also moving forward. And that was super satisfying. We also got to see some things that we hadn't yet seen in this series, like with the Wraith family, the White Court, and how they really, really operate. And there was just some really good things going there. The story itself, good, strong driving action. Like all of the Harry Dresden Files books, there is just so much energy, and that is so satisfying as a reader to experience. So overall, I'm really impressed by this book. I love it. I reread it, as part of the Dresden Files series, and have for now several years. So really, really happy to be moving forward on these. We're going to be getting more books like this moving forward throughout the year. The story wraps up and ends with Thomas moving in at Harry's place, and that's going to set us up to where we are at in the next book. Situationally, we've got Thomas moved in, we have Mouse the dog living there with Harry, and it's going to be a lot of changes for Harry Dresden moving forward. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can support me on my various platforms by checking those out and following me there as well. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, most especially, and those are at Nerd Morning. Also, if you choose, you can support me on Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/nerdmorning. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you guys next time.